Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Do Wanna Know podcast. Today's episode is for all of my aspiring entrepreneurs and people who love learning about cool, interesting businesses. I'm interviewing Alex Schinasi, an accomplished entrepreneur and co-founder of Hulken, Ivy, and Clay. Ivy is a software platform designed for home remodeling professionals, which was successfully sold in 2018, while Clay, a childcare software solution, was acquired by Kangaroo Time in 2024. Hulken is Alex's business that you actually may have heard of before or even seen on the streets. The Hulken bag is a reusable lightweight bag on wheels that also folds flat. It's a rolling tote that sells for $100 to $125 each. Hulken created a new category of products and has grown to mid-8 figures in less than 5 years without outside funding while being profitable from day one. Alex has a passion for functional design and practical elegance, and this is what she hopes to share with the Hulken bag. She is also recognized for her dedication to empowering women in business and her strategic approach to growing brands in competitive markets. Alex is a mom of 3, married to her Israeli husband Yoni, who runs Hulken alongside her. As you'll hear in the episode, she's now based in Portugal after 2 decades of splitting time between New York and Tel Aviv. This is a super easy listen of an episode. It flies by. Alex offers countless pieces of practical advice and learnings from her years of being an entrepreneur. And what I love about Alex is her candor and how she shows up fearlessly in an industry where the shots are often called by men. I also appreciate how proud and matter-of-fact she is about her love of Jewish life in Israel. Often, business owners try to shy away from this because they don't want to jeopardize sales, for example. Alex is very much like, here I am, world, this is me. And I think we need more of this unapologetic approach from Jewish business owners. As it pertains to the Hulken bag itself, I think it's a very interesting concept. The margins on each bag are insane if it's selling for over $100 a piece. The manufacturing cost of a tote like that is not going to be super high at all. And Alex talks about how dupes have come out of the Hulken, which has been something that they're working through. And honestly, I'm not surprised in the slightest because it's very easy to compete on price. This is exactly what makes the consumer space so competitive and difficult for small businesses, because you have this small business that starts out making a product and the product's great. And then a giant manufacturer like Amazon comes in and they can offer it at far greater scale and far lower price. Costco, for example, came out with the Clever Made Foldable Tote, which they sell for only $35. And I'm sure that even at $35 a bag, their margins are still fantastic. I'm guessing that this means Hulken as a brand will have to demonstrate some kind of exclusivity or intrigue of the bag in order to continue to offer it at the same price point. And this is kind of reminiscent of the whole Uggs versus Fugs thing from growing up. When I was in middle school, Costco had a fantastic Uggs knockoff that also used real sheepskin. Those boots were only $40 versus the $100 price point of real Uggs. And the quality was exactly 1-to-1 with real Uggs. But of course, no one in middle school wanted to be caught wearing Fugs from Costco. So this is kind of the same thing. There are quite a few celebrities or influencers that have been spotted using or endorsing the Hulken. Chrissy Teigen, Joanna Gaines, Oprah's creative director, and the Hulken was even featured on HBO's And Just Like That. I hope you enjoy getting the inside scoop of a unique Jewish-owned business that has become wildly successful, and I hope you take away some valuable business advice from Alex. Please enjoy this episode. Hello, Alex. Welcome to People Do Wanna Know podcast. How's it going today?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me. Super happy to be here.
I'm very excited to chat with you. Without further ado, tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
Well, my name is Alex Schinasi. I am an entrepreneur of 15 plus years. I was born in Switzerland, but I've spent the last 20 years between New York City, Tel Aviv, and more recently relocated to Lisbon, Portugal. So I've been all over the map, but I very much started my entrepreneurial journey in Israel, in Tel Aviv, more specifically, where I met my co-founder, Lee, with whom I've built 2 startups. And I think that's important because I think without having lived in Israel and having had that time in the startup nation, really at the center of entrepreneurship, I don't think I would have achieved half of the things I've done. And Tel Aviv was very much prone for entrepreneurship. It was a place where entrepreneurs were encouraged to meet and exchange ideas and really ripe for creating companies. The city of Tel Aviv gave us an office very early on before we raised $1 in capital. We had our first fundraise from Israeli VCs. So it very much sits as a foundation of our story, because that's where it all started. And mostly because we were surrounded with people that were thinking differently, people that were willing to take risks, people that were willing to share and exchange on topics that typically other entrepreneurs in the US and Europe would be very guarded and not sharing as much. And I think this Tel Aviv environment was very much key to our success, key to getting us started. And for that, I'm forever indebted to that city.
That's amazing. And before we dive into your businesses, tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I was born in Switzerland from non-Swiss parents. So my dad was actually born in Alexandria, Egypt, and he emigrated to Switzerland when he was a young child for reasons that we all know. All the Jews were forced to leave in the 50s after Nasser came to power. So they landed in Switzerland. They were French speakers, so I think they had cousins there, and that was a great place to be. And my mother came from Sweden. My mom wasn't Jewish. She wasn't raised Jewish. She converted, and they both met in Switzerland. So it's one of these things where, my identity is many different things. I grew up with a Sephardic Jewish dad, Jewish Swedish mother, lots of different cultures, really a mishmash of things. But like the one thing that was very clear and certain from day one was my Jewish identity. And I'm trying to do the same with my children, who were all born in New York City, now living in Portugal, but with an Israeli father and a Swiss mom. But, the one culture that we really hold on to and feel very strongly about, and that kind of sticks everything together, is our Jewish identity.
Are you worried about your kids going to school in Portugal? Europe in general is kind of a difficult place for Jews right now. So that's why I ask.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very valid question. And I get that question all the time, especially from Americans. I don't feel any concern for their safety in Portugal. Portugal is kind of this isolated place. It feels extremely safe. It's kind of removed from the world's troubles. You don't have all the tension that you have stateside from a political standpoint. You don't obviously have what we have in Israel from a political standpoint. It's its own bubble, and I'm enjoying the bubble, I have to say. And of course, we're expats, so we're extra lucky because we're also removed from the internal bubble and the kind of internal tensions that Portuguese people have. So no, it feels extremely safe, more safe than I would feel in New York right now, actually, as a Jew. I feel very lucky that we found this gem of a place, because we were always bouncing back and forth between Tel Aviv and New York and thinking, where are we going to go? There's so many reasons not to be in either of these places right now. And Portugal wasn't an obvious choice for me because, like I said, it's not a culture that I'm familiar with. And it was strange for me. I'm a French speaker. I don't speak the language. There's not a strong Jewish culture either, but it's one culture that welcomes everyone. And that's one culture where we all feel very safe.
How have you talked to your children about what's going on today, especially considering they've been to Israel many times at this rate?
Yeah, it was a difficult 2 years. When October 7th happened, my oldest was 8 years old. And I think we were in such a state of shock that for the longest time, we didn't bring it up at all to our kids. The only thing we said is my brother-in-law was called to the army in the Miluim, in the reserves. And so we did communicate that to Isaac, my now 10-year-old at the time, saying, listen, there's a war. Uncle Eyal was called to serve, but he's safe. We were obviously much more alarmed than we sounded when talking to him. But for a long time, we couldn't talk about it. We were so consumed and distraught. And I think we emanated an energy that maybe wasn't the most positive one. And I think naturally they felt some tension, but we couldn't speak to them in a way that made sense to us, in a way that would make sense to a child. And I can't believe now it's been 2 years later almost. And only now, with my now 10-year-old, do I feel like we have the kind of courage to talk about things, because we have enough distance from it and we have maybe more ways to address it that we didn't feel comfortable talking about it earlier on. He's also older, but our younger kids, we actually don't really talk about it. I hate to say it, but we try to preserve them from that. And I think our way to kind of fight back with everything going on is just strengthening their Jewish identity, having more community. We're lucky that in Lisbon, we have an incredible, very tight-knit Jewish community. and Israeli community. And for that, I think is kind of how it was reflected on them. They're going to join the Tzofim, the Israeli Scouts, in September. We have a great Chabad in Kashkaish near Lisbon. And so all these things just have become so much more important to us. And, I'm married to an Israeli, a secular Israeli who never cared about religion or Jewish identity until he left Israel. I think that's very common. Until he left Israel, for him, it was kind of this abstract concept. And there's so much tension within Israel between the religious and the non-religious. And so that concept of feeling proudly Jewish and proud to experience the Jewish religion was not something that he was familiar with. And it's something that now has become so much more important for us as a family.
That's difficult and that's wonderful at the same time. And I really hope that this new chapter for you in Portugal develops into something great. And it's amazing that your kids are going to be part of Tzofim. Like, I haven't spoken to anybody who has kids in Tzofim in years.
Yeah, no, we feel very lucky that we even have this opportunity. I think that says a lot about Lisbon, right? Like, you wouldn't think there's Tzofim in Lisbon. It's a very Israeli movement. But the fact that it's there and is thriving is just a testament of how great it is for Jewish people there.
For sure. And I want to pivot to talk about the Hulken bag, obviously, because it is just such an iconic business. All over New York, you have people dragging these totes with their bright, metallic, fun colors. And every time I see it, I think of you instantly because I'm like, oh my gosh, I know the person who invented this. Talk to me about how you're driving your business now. And for those who are not familiar, walk the listener through the premise of the Hulken bag and what you hope to achieve with this business.
Yeah, it's interesting because my background has always been in B2B software, SaaS tools, very much tech. And so my first two companies were two software businesses and no physical product. I always said, I'm never going to do a consumer company. Oh my gosh, it's so complicated. So it was not my natural fit, not something that I was gravitating towards necessarily. But then my father actually invented the bag. So my same father who came from Egypt in the 50s and had a long-standing family business that my grandfather started in manufacturing and packaging, created this bag on a napkin, literally designed it like this, sent it to his factory. And we were so in love with the product as a family. We all started using it left and right. My brothers, my mother, I was using it for the kid, for road trips, for groceries, for laundry in New York City. And no one was doing anything with it. So I kind of, with my husband, took it under our wing when COVID happened and said, okay, let's just take this to market. Let's open up a website. Let's see how it goes. I'm not sure this is ever going to go anywhere. But next thing you know, it started growing organically and we started seeing so much love around this product from our community that we understood there was a pull. And I think there's always a point in a business where you're not sure where that's going to go. You may have to pivot a couple of times until you get that product market fit, that real pull for the market. And once you get that pull, you really know you got the pull. So without investing any dollar in marketing, without raising money, which is very unusual for a consumer brand not to raise capital, we started getting press. We started getting a lot of influencer mentions. And most importantly, like you said, you see it on the street. It's not something you can ignore. It's something that's bright and shiny and loud, and it has wheels. It's kind of funky looking and different. And that alone was such a powerful marketing engine that it created this flywheel of virality. And I think the flywheel is what took it from very much a side gig, something that we weren't sure whether it was going to be successful or not, to a natural business. And actually, Lee and I, so my co-founder that I met in Israel back in 2012, we only sold our last business last April. So it's only been a year since we've been full-time on Hulken. And before that, it was my husband running it and I was helping on nights and weekends and Lee was advising on the side. And we had lots of freelancers helping us, but it was still treated as a side project and it generated over 30 million in revenue just last year alone. So I think that just shows that, again, for a lot of entrepreneurs, I get asked all the time, how do I know when to take that leap of faith? When do I take that jump to creating my own thing? I think you can do a lot of different things at once. We were running another software business while running Hulken on the side and did it very successfully. So we're here now, fast forward in 2025, we're a team of 5 stateside. Lots of freelancers and a great production team. We own our production in India and Hungary, which I think is very important. And that is obviously a huge asset because it comes from my family's heritage in packaging. And that's something that most brands don't have in their back pocket, and usually why they require so much capital to buy inventory. So we're here today, we're thriving. It's so much fun. I never thought I'd say that about a consumer business, but I think the love from the community is such that I am just enjoying it so much.
One of the things I love about your business is you always come up with unique ways to promote the bag. For example, you have a whole segment that you do on social media on unusual marketing tactics that you applied when you were first starting out to promote the business and why they worked. And that has nothing to do with the bag itself, right? That's not a clear promotion of the bag. You are teaching people about marketing and about entrepreneurship. And as a result, they're falling in love with your business, which I think is fantastic because you're bringing value not just in the product itself, but also in what they learn from you as a person who is behind this business. Mm-hmm. So they can engage with Hulken as a brand in many different ways. You went from software to bags. Tell me, what are the tried and true business principles that you've seen running two very different companies?
Two very different companies. I think one is speed. If you have to fail quickly. If you have to fire quickly. Try to move quickly, whatever you're building, whether it's a piece of software, if it's not working, if you're not getting that pull from the market, throw it out the garbage, build a new one. If you're not getting a pull from a physical product, and again, it's a little bit harder because you do have to create it and invest in a product before it comes to fruition, try to get to that point of product market fit as quickly as possible and stay nimble and stay agile around your own principles as a founder. Don't get stuck on an idea. Meaning if something isn't working, you have to be able to pivot quickly and change accordingly. I think another thing that has been helpful for me, and you've seen that in my posts on social media, is that we don't take ourselves so seriously. I mean, this is my third company at this point. You know, if I'm going to have to go on the street and put a turkey suit on for Thanksgiving, I'm going to do it if it's going to take the company forward. So I think I personally love that early stage mentality where you still get your hands wet. We're still a very small team. We plan on staying a very small team. We love being neat and very lean. We love to be involved in all different aspects of the business. And that means sometimes doing things you don't really, frankly, want to do. But I think it's important to stay agile and keep that mentality as much as possible.
Is there anything the Hulken won't do? Is there any business strategy you won't take?
Yeah, I do get asked that. But I've also learned with my other businesses to never say never. I've said never to certain things and then changed my mind a million times. And I think that's part of being a great founder, is not being stuck in your way. But for now, we're very strict on not raising capital. We want to make sure that we can take this company forward as much as possible without raising money. I think it makes us smarter, to be honest. I think it makes us think, just having more of a hustle mentality about everything that we do. So when it comes to marketing, for example, we don't have the luxury of endless capital to hire this big team. We really want to stay focused and focus on the initiatives that bring the most ROI. And especially nowadays with the economy being unstable and being what it is, we want to make sure that we keep a profitable business. And I think sometimes raising capital too quickly or too much will make you lose track of that and will make you too comfortable to the extent that you may lose sight on what makes your business a profitable one.
One of the challenges I learned about with consumer goods like yours is that it's hard to maintain control of knockoffs, right? Somebody could go and make a similar tote or something else on wheels that is very akin to what the Hulken is. Did you have to make a patent or something like that? How are you able to ensure that, some Chinese shop on Amazon.com isn't making a similar product?
I mean, it's our biggest curse at the moment. It's definitely something that stays top of mind for us. Listen, we created an entirely new category of products. A rolling tote bag did not exist until my father drafted this on a napkin. And I think the result of being successful is that you're going to get knocked off. And we've seen that, Target duped us, Costco duped us. I think that's a sign of success. I don't think any of them have the expertise that we have and the know-how that we bring in creating this specific product. So I think if anything, it validates the demand, that there's a demand for the product, and that's great. Of course, it makes our lives. Also, if you go on Alibaba, you'll Google Hulken and see that there's a million pictures of me and my kids and different members of the family with Hulkens, because they don't only knock off your idea and your product, they knock off your entire marketing strategy. So they'll take all of your photos. And of course, my instinct and kind of first gut reaction was how annoying that was. But we now are learning to live with it. And of course, we are protected with patents. And when we can, we are enforcing them as much as possible. It's, of course, a very expensive, lengthy process, but it's one that's important because we've protected the bag enough for a reason to make sure that this doesn't just happen anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And tariffs. I have to ask about tariffs. You mentioned that you do business in India and Hungary. Is that correct?
Correct. That's where we manufacture. Yeah.
How are you going to navigate this time? You're the first person I'm speaking to that has a business that's affected by tariffs.
Oh my gosh. I mean, listen, I think on the one hand, we're lucky we're not manufacturing in China. Having said that, India is not in a good position right now. I think the hardest part of this whole tariff thing is that there's so much unknown. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. There's different extensions that keep on being applied. We don't know. There's another 90-day now on China. We don't really know where India is going to land. I think we more or less know where Europe's going to go. So that's a good, solid basis. But it's still, even if it's not the 250% increase that we see in China, it's still an additional 10 to 20%. I mean, these numbers matter. Every percentage point matters when you're building a consumer brand. So it's definitely a headache that we have to deal with. I think we are navigating it well. But I think, again, the unknown is what makes it so hard to deal with. It's so unpredictable. We don't know what tomorrow brings. And we just want to get to a place where things get a little bit stable so that we can plan ahead.
The other question I always ask business owners that sell a product specifically is, what is a business do-over you'd like to have?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm trying to think if it has to do with dupe. There's very little I would do differently at this point. I think it's a company that keeps on surprising us, that keeps on giving. The fact that we collaborated with brands like Supreme and New York City Ballet so early on without having a full-time marketing team or any capital raised, I think is incredible. I think the next stage of Hulken is going to be the interesting one from a business perspective. The first stage of Hulken was us hustling, figuring out, is this a business? Is this not? Working on it on nights and weekends. And now the real interesting chapter will be how we take this from 50 to 100 million in revenue. How do we make this a global brand that stands above the noise, above the dupes? We're only now starting to go global. The US is still 95% of our market. And I think we're only just scratching the surface. So I think that's what makes it so exciting, because there's so many untapped opportunities. And that's what I'm excited to see kind of how it's going to go. I do want to stay lean as much as possible. I do want to keep this hustle mentality as much as possible. But I feel like as we grow, it's kind of becomes harder and harder to stay that way.
Who are your mentors now as you navigate some of these new problem spaces that you maybe haven't worked on before?
It's a great question. The first that comes to mind is my own father, who has been in the business for decades and built his own company from the ground up. And I think because he's been in the physical space for so many decades, he foresees things in a way that I don't, because I've been in software. And when it comes to tariffs and importing and all these kind of unsexy parts of the business that I honestly don't really want to deal with, but they're very real and concrete parts of the business, we rely on him so much. And he brings such a wealth of knowledge on that front that Yoni and I, my husband, we feel so thankful to have him by our side. So it's, in that sense, very much a family business. Other than that, I try to learn from other founders, and that's something that I've found the most impactful in everything that I've done. So I've always loved being a part of collectives and founder communities. With my first two companies, we exchanged so much with founders in software, and we've learned so much from founders in software, what has worked, what didn't work, and just having these very honest conversations. And I have to say, I'm struggling to find that in consumer. I find that people are a little bit more guarded. I find that founders are a little bit maybe less willing to share numbers openly, when I think that's actually what makes us stronger. I think a lot of them are, frankly, trying to stay profitable. And in this market, it's very difficult to raise capital. It's very difficult to be profitable, to reach profitability. So maybe they just have other things on their minds. But in general, I would advise anyone, if they can, to be open with others and also try to find these peers that will inform you on their own strategies, what has worked for their company, what has taken their companies forward, because you can apply a lot of these learnings to what you do.
I'm interested to know, as you look back on your career outside of the Hulken, what do you think is your proudest achievement as an entrepreneur, and why was it your proudest achievement?
Yeah, I had an interview with Newsweek a couple weeks back, and the reporter actually raised that to me, and I thought that was a really interesting takeaway that now I'm going to steal from her. That all of my companies was empowering female-led businesses. So my first company, Ivy, was a software business that was helping interior designers with their admin, their workflow, their accounting. And interior design is a primarily female community. My second company was empowering educators in early childhood. Again, a very overwhelmingly female driven. And now with Hulken, 95% of our buyers are women, whether they're moms or they're, hustlers, makeup artists, fashion stylists, you name it. We empower so many different female communities. And there's kind of that common thread amongst across the different companies that I've built. And I'm just so proud of that. And unintentionally almost, I find myself empowering these different female communities. And I think that's wonderful.
Women hold the power to the wallet, right? They build the home and they make the decisions around what's in the home and how things are used. So I would actually argue that creating products for women is the smarter thing to do in market, because it's women who control.
Absolutely. 100%. I just had never thought about that commonality across such different companies, but 100%. We know that the consumer spending is driven by women, and I'm happy that I'm able to somehow address it.
And talk to me about your Unfinished Business podcast. What are the kinds of conversations you're hoping to have on there?
So Unfinished Business, we launched last September. So it's been a year. We just wrapped up season 1, and it's kind of a passion project for Lee and I. So we always get asked to talk with other founders, other aspiring entrepreneurs that want to get our 2 cents, our advice. And we figured this was a great way to scale that advice beyond just our own perspectives, but bringing in other founders to bring their own and scale that to a broader audience. We also end up talking about family and kids and, all things life. So it's a lot of different things, but it's whatever keeps us up at night, whatever, Lee and I feel like talking about is kind of what we bring forward on the podcast. It's been very exciting. And most importantly, I've loved interacting with so many different types of guests and meeting so many people. So it's been really fun.
The reality is that most startups, be it software or products, fail because there's just not room for millions of businesses every year. Some will fail and some will succeed. Yeah. After studying behavioral science for many years, much of my findings in that degree included learning about entrepreneurs and the little bit of delusion that entrepreneurs have to have in order to push their business, even when things are not fitting, they're not coming together. You kind of take a different strategy where you talk about do everything fast. If something's not working, find it fast, fix it fast. Don't try to double down on something that's clearly not coming together. As you navigate these founder spaces, the reality is you're going to meet a lot of people who, not to call them frauds, but their businesses will not succeed. And there is a little bit of a bullshitting culture in entrepreneurship spaces. How are you seeing through that, and what are the dead giveaway signs that someone's business is going to be successful and another business is doomed?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of bullshit culture, especially in the VC-backed world. So a lot of these founders have unrealistic targets, to be honest. They're under the scrutiny of boards. The board members are usually VC partners that give them these unrealistic goals that they have to meet very quickly. I mean, the VC model is one where you have to reach hundreds of millions in revenue in order for the VC partner to be interested to begin with. And I think that is not for all businesses, and that's fine. And I'm kind of happy to be out of that because the pressure's off. We want to grow with profitability in mind, profit first, in a way that's sustainable for the next 10 to 15 years. Our goal is not to grow as quickly as possible over the next 2 years in order to fit that VC model. So I think the fact to not have this pressure is obviously a gift for us. And I've done both ways. I've raised capital, and I think there's a lot of good in raising capital from VCs too. We've had some of the best friendships are with my old investors. But the bullshit culture, it kind of nurtures that bullshit culture, right? Because it makes people want to show off. It makes people want to throw numbers in your face in order to show that they're growing. And sometimes I even have to detangle from that. It's still in the back of my mind that like I have to show off and I have to show that we're killing it. But that actually can be counterproductive. I think a way to distinguish between a good business and one that's just showing off is really just looking at the raw data and understanding from the numbers, is there a pull? Is there not? And the storytelling is important, but it's very easy to see if the storytelling is backed by data or not.
There's also something about business that doesn't make sense, which is how people are drawn to products that intuitively you wouldn't think would add a lot of value to them. Like this idea of Labubu, for example. Why is the Labubu so viral? In a market of toys and products, it's unexplainable because it's a trend. It doesn't follow
it's a trend.
The typical
you
rules.
Can control trends. And I think that's one thing with when you have to look at a business success, you can't rely on trends alone. Like you can't also predict trends and you can't manufacture trends. I think what you can is do really good marketing planning and understand your ROI and understand your marketing channels and understand how to scale your business in a way that stays profitable. Why are people excited about Hulken? We didn't think it would go anywhere, right? We just were smart with the decisions of not spending too much too quickly. We kind of let it go and kind of threw it out there and to see how it went. And I think that allowed us to adjust accordingly and grow based on the demand as opposed to invest heavily at the beginning on something that we weren't sure was going to go anywhere. And that's one of my personal struggles as a software founder with having a consumer brand. I want to test so many new products, but I can't do it unless I invest a lot of time and money into development and production and getting it out on my website. It's a long life cycle that as a software founder is sometimes difficult because you want to get to the bottom of whether there's demand as quickly as possible, and that's not always doable.
If Hulken had a brand influencers trip to the Bahamas or something like that, who would be there?
Oh gosh, I would need to think about that one. I think we just have a mix of really quirky and different, people that really stand out and think differently. Like when I think about our communities and who love Hulken, it's so varied and so broad. I mean, it's really incredible the different niches that we discovered through leading Hulken. Like there's the professional mermaid community. Who knew that there's a professional mermaid community that dress as mermaids and do shows, and it's a whole culture of itself where they have to carry their tails and their wigs and their jewelry and whatnot. So, I mean, this is Hulken, and we say we do everything with a wink, and I think that translates in everything we do. So if we were to do a brand trip, we probably wouldn't do it in the Bahamas. We would probably do it in somewhere a little bit different that would just attract these types of people that just think differently and that embrace the personality of Hulken, which is a little bit quirky, a little bit funny with a wink, but also elevated and different.
That's awesome. And tell me, how can people connect with you on social media and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so connect with me on Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time. I would say LinkedIn is another great way. On Instagram, you'll find me at Alex Schinasi. You'll find me on LinkedIn under the same name. And that's it. Yeah, we just started a TikTok with Lee called the Schlepping Duo. We suck at TikTok, but we're just throwing spaghettis at the wall and seeing what stick. But maybe you'll find me on there as well.
Are you going to sell on TikTok Shop or no?
Yeah, so this has been a long time coming. We are selling on TikTok Shop. Our shop is live. Actually, just after this podcast, I have a call with the TikTok team to finalize everything. But yeah, that's one of the new sales channels we're exploring.
That's excellent. I hope it goes really well.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited.
And I have one final question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest. Who would you like to nominate for People You Want to Know?
Oof, well, I would say Lee, my co-founder and forever work wife, because she's incredibly smart and just a wonderful, fun guest to have. And if you go on our TikTok, you'll see her personality come out more. So I encourage that. Yeah, she's one of the best humans I know, most smart humans I know, and incredible Jewish person you should have on the podcast.
Thanks so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People You Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People You Want to Know.